Scary Mysteries Twisted 2's, Reyna Marroquin, and Ann Baker's wedding dress. Tales of hauntings, murder, and scary mysteries. Every week, Twisted 2's dives into a pair of uniquely terrifying true stories that are worthy of a more in-depth look. For this week, we focus on a woman dubbed as the Lady in the Drum and the haunted and terrifying curse from a wedding dress. Get ready for Scary Mysteries Twisted 2's. Number 1. Reyna Marroquin. Everyone who dreams of getting to America often thinks of heading to and living in New York City. This bustling metropolis has become a sign of hope for many immigrants over the centuries, and where El Salvador native Reyna Marroquin set her sights in getting to. Reyna left her home country, headed for America in August of 1966. In her late 20s, she was looking for a fresh start after a failed marriage. She attended fashion school there and eventually got a job as a nanny, then finally worked at the Melrose Plastic Company. She thrived in the city and created a good circle of friends. Despite her usual happy demeanor, her close friends began to notice a change in her. When her best friend, Catherine Andrade, asked her if something was wrong, she broke down, admitting that she was pregnant. Although she wouldn't say who the father was, she mentioned that he was married. Reyna said the man promised to marry her at some point, but as time passed and nothing happened, Reyna became desperate. One day, Catherine received a phone call from a frantic Reyna. She was in a panic, telling her friend, "He's going to kill me." Catherine tried to calm her but couldn't, so she decided to head to her apartment right away. When she reached the door and knocked, no one answered. The door was slightly open, so she stepped inside. Catherine noticed warm food was left on the counter, and everything looked fine. Even though it was winter, though, Reyna's coat, boots, and gloves were there, but she was nowhere to be found. Catherine waited a few hours, hoping her friend would come back, but eventually contacted police. However, they dismissed the case, saying Reyna probably took off with her boyfriend. For the next 30 years, Catherine never found out what happened to her friend. Simply put, Reyna had vanished without a trace. But on September 2nd, 1999, Ronald Cohen was preparing to move out of his home in Jericho, New York. He had recently sold the house and was clearing out some extra items before the new owners moved in. In the crawl space was a sealed 55-gallon drum that had been there since he moved in, but since it was so heavy and tightly sealed, he never bothered to ever open it or move it. But this time around, he wanted to dispose of it properly. He rolled it to the curb of his home with difficulty because it was so heavy. Once there, he decided to pry it open, curious as to what was inside. When he opened it, a noxious chemical smell wafted through the air, and from the pile of green sludgy pellets was a human hand sticking out of it. Authorities arrived and found the barrel on the curbside, and sure enough, there was an entire body inside. After close examination, authorities determined the body was that of a young woman with long dark hair and unusual dental work. She had died from blunt force trauma. Even more shocking is that she was several months pregnant, the fetus measuring about 17 inches long. Inside the drum barrel, various items were also recovered. This included a degraded address book, 2 rings, a locket, green dye, remnants of plastic leaves, and polystyrene pellets. Detectives initially focused on the address book and found an alien residency number, but also discovered the number of Catherine Andrade, who was still living at the same address 30 years later. Andrade provided police with information, including what happened in the days before Reyna disappeared, but she still had no idea who the father of Reyna's child was. Police traced the origin of the drums back to Melrose Plastics, a company who had used the drums for transporting dye. It was the same company where Reyna had worked. Melrose Plastics was partly owned by Howard Elkins. Detectives asked neighbors around and said the home did once belong to Howard, but he had since moved to Boca Raton, Florida. Moreover, an anonymous caller told police Elkins had been having an affair with a Hispanic woman who worked in his factory during the 1960s. So detectives headed to Florida to speak with Elkins on September 9th. They found him alive and well, living in his upscale apartment. They presented him with the findings of the barrel, along with the green dye they found leading back to his company. Elkins admitted to having an affair but said he couldn't recall her name or what she even looked like. Police then asked if he would provide a DNA sample to find out if he was the father of the fetus, but he refused. Before leaving, cops told Elkins they would secure a court order to obtain his blood sample. Soon after that, Elkins bought a shotgun and ammunition from Walmart. He then killed himself the next day on September 10th. The DNA testing proved later on that he was in fact the father of the unborn baby. Police believe that on the night Reyna disappeared, Elkins visited her at her apartment or possibly lured her to the factory to kill her. He then attacked her, repeatedly hit her in the head, and took the body and placed it in the drum, filling it with plastic pellets. Investigators believe his intention was to take the barrel and dump it into the ocean using his boat. However, the barrel became too heavy to move, and in the end, he left it under the crawl space of his home. After the case made headlines, writer Oscar Corral went to San Martin, El Salvador, where he found Reyna's 94-year-old mother. And eerily, there she told him that she had dreamt her daughter was trapped inside a barrel. Reyna's remains were buried in El Salvador. About a month later, her mother also passed away and was buried alongside her daughter. Number 2. Ann Baker's wedding dress. For most women, wearing a wedding dress and walking down the aisle is a dream come true, and it was no different for Ann Baker of Blair County, Pennsylvania. The third child and first daughter to prominent ironmaster Elias Baker, Anna was a headstrong woman for someone born in the 1800s. She was stubborn and strong-willed. Her father was a tenacious and proud businessman who bought a dyeing furnace business in Blair, partnering with his cousin Ronald Diller. This turned out to be a good move as the business became a success. Soon, Baker bought out his cousin's shares and became a prominent businessman. With everything going well, Baker hired architect Robert Long to design and build him a massive Greek Revival-style mansion. It took several years before the structure was eventually finished, and in 1849 the family moved in and enjoyed a life of luxury. However, for Anna, she didn't care much for the amenities or the luxurious life. She had also fallen in love with a worker from the local steel factory, but being a proud man, Elias disapproved of the relationship from the start. Anna and her lover planned to marry in secret, hence she bought a wedding gown, but Elias found out and put a stop to it. Out of bitterness, Anna remained single for the rest of her life. But after Anna's death, the Baker mansion was transformed into a museum, and the wedding dress displayed right inside Anna's former bedroom. Guests who visit the museum say the dress moves and sways by itself even without anything causing it. Could this be Anna's way of displaying her love and desire to still be with her lover? Those who visit the museum not only talk of the haunted wedding dress, but of seeing apparitions of Anna herself and even the rest of the Baker family, including Elias and his wife, Hetty. On certain occasions, cold spots, strange footsteps, and unusual odors have emanated from the rooms. Guests and staff members have reported seeing apparitions and a mysterious music box playing at random times. Today, Anna's wedding dress remains a permanent fixture of the Blair Museum. So there were two of the most frightening and haunted stories around. The world can be a crazy place, and Twisted 2's is sure to show you why. If you enjoyed this video, then please remember to subscribe to our channel. We have new scary mysteries coming out every single week that we know you'll want to check out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.